Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tired of political games and wasteful spending? You're in the right place. Today, we're diving into Senator Kennedy's take on Washington's spending problem and Elon Musk's insights on your tax dollars. You won't believe what we're about to discuss. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get into it.
I've been in the Senate for 8 years. In dog years, that's 56 years. And it feels like 56 years. I've learned a lot, met a lot of interesting people. Before I got here, everybody told me about the Washington bubble. And I said, how serious could they be? Well, it's true. There is a Washington bubble. This place is different. It's in its own way, sometimes disappointing, sometimes refreshing. It is deeply weird. For one thing, common sense is illegal in Washington. It's illegal. For another thing, I've discovered that this is a town of very frustrated ex-class presidents. And there's a Washington way of doing things. And when things aren't done that way, when somebody challenges the status quo, many, not all, but many of these frustrated ex-class presidents in Washington, on the Hill and otherwise, they get excited, not in a good way. They can't get their mind around doing anything other than the Washington way. Some of them, particularly in the media, they go almost catatonic, or the exact opposite. They foam at the mouth. And they really get upset. They can make a Valium nervous. It's like the world, we're not doing things the way we've always done them, and the world's going to spin off its axis. I want to try to put in perspective what many of my Democratic friends have been talking about today. They're very, very, very upset at President Trump. And they're very, very, very upset at Elon Musk. President Trump ran for president on a number of issues. One of the issues he ran on, he said it almost every day. He said, if you elect me president, I'm going to go through the entire budget and review all the spending, line by line. If I heard him say that once, I heard him say it 1,000 times. And that's what he's been doing. He went out and appointed, through an executive order, Elon Musk, who some people like him, some don't, but he's not a dummy. He's a very successful business person. He's got a top secret security clearance. President Trump issued an executive order, and he turned to Mr. Musk, and he said, Mr. Musk, I want you to do for me what I said I was going to do in the election. I want you to go through all the spending, line by line. Now, let me ask you something, Mr. President. How are you going to review the spending without reviewing the spending? How are you going to audit the spending by an agency without auditing the agency? That's what I mean when I say common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C. That's what Mr. Musk is doing. He's put together a crackerjack team, and they're going through everybody's spending line by line, item by item. And my Democratic colleagues are very, very, very upset. And they've been very eloquent. They've talked about the process, and President Trump's executive order supposedly violates the Constitution. And they've accused Mr. Musk of having conflicts of interest. And so I've heard people say he's sitting over there with a notepad, copying down everybody's Social Security number, and he's going to go use it to make money. I mean, people in this town, not just my Democratic colleagues, they're really upset. They've never had anybody question their spending.
Senator Kennedy has been in Washington for 8 years, 56 in dog years as he puts it, and he's seen how weird and out of touch this place can be. Common sense, practically illegal. Now Elon Musk challenges the status quo and they can't handle it. Trump made a promise to review spending line by line. Enter Elon Musk, one of the smartest business minds out there. With his team, he's uncovering where the money is going. And surprise, surprise, there's a lot of waste. And the reaction from Washington? Absolute panic. Instead of addressing the waste, they attack Musk personally.
But that's what Mr. Musk is doing. But you know, I've listened. This has been going on for a week. People have been screaming like they're part of a prison riot. Oh my God, look at what Musk is doing. He's looking at the spending. And I've listened to people talk about the process and debate whether it's constitutional and discuss how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin. But you know what? I haven't heard one single person who's upset with President Trump or Mr. Musk talk about what he's found. They don't want to talk about the spending porn, the waste of taxpayer money that he's found. I mean, that's the point of all this. I tell you who is interested. The American people. The people in America who get up every day and go to work and obey the law and pay their taxes and try to educate their kids and try to do the right thing by their kids and try to save a little money for retirement, and have had to live through 20% inflation under President Biden. They understand what Musk is doing. They understand spending porn and wasting taxpayer money. Now, Mr. Musk started with the USAID. That handles a lot of foreign aid for America. American people are very generous. In our country, you know, when you're homeless, we'll house you. When you're hungry, we'll feed you. In our country, when you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. And we send a lot of money overseas to help our world's neighbors. And the USAID is in charge, in large part, of that. But I'll tell you what Mr. Musk discovered. I find it fascinating. He discovered that the American taxpayers are giving money to Afghanistan. He found that we are giving money to Yemen. He found that we are giving money to Syria. I didn't know that. Some of our foreign aid is going to Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria. He found that the USAID has 10,000 people, 10,000 people, employees. And every year they give away $40 billion. Mr. Musk also found, and I'm not saying that all of this money is wasteful. I'm not. Some of this money, I'm sure, does some good. That's why Secretary Rubio is going to revamp the department and separate the good from the bad. But this is the kind of stuff Mr. Musk found. He found that the USAID gave money to support electric vehicles in Vietnam. Our money, taxpayer money. He found that USAID gave money to a transgender clinic in India. I didn't know that. I bet you the American people didn't know that. He found that the USAID gave $1.5 million to a Serbian LGBTQ group called Grupa Izladaji. I probably mispronounced that, my apologies. Anyway, they got $1.5 million to, quote, advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. What else did Mr. Musk found that my colleagues don't want to talk about? Well, he reviewed a study and then went and checked it. The study was done by the Middle East Forum. They found that USAID spent $164 million to support radical organizations around the world. We're not talking Cub Scout troops here. We're talking about radical organizations around the world. They gave $122 million of that to groups aligned with foreign terrorist organizations. Our taxpayer money. According to this report in Mr. Musk, the USAID has given millions of dollars to, quote, organizations in Gaza controlled by Hamas. Why aren't my colleagues talking about that? Recipients of the money, they found, have, quote, called for their lands to be cleansed from the impurity of Jews. That's what we're giving foreign aid to. What else? I'm not going to spend my whole time talking about this, but nobody else is talking about it. They're just talking about the process and Mr. Musk, and he's a mean guy, and he shouldn't be looking at our spending. Well, he is. And I kind of find what he's found out interesting. He found that we gave $2 million, USAID did, for sex changes in Guatemala. He found that we gave $20 million to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. He found that we gave $4.5 million of taxpayer money to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. He found that we gave $10 million, USAID did, of meals to an al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group called the Nusra Front. Mr. Musk found that we gave $7.9 million of taxpayer money to a project that would teach Sri Lankan journalists to avoid binary gendered language. The USAID took $8 million and gave it to a bunch of journalists in Sri Lanka to teach them how to avoid binary gendered language. I don't know what the hell binary gendered language is. I think I do. You think most taxpayers would support that? Why aren't we talking about that? The USAID gave $1.5 million to promote LGBT advocacy in Jamaica. They gave $1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem. They gave $1.5 million for, quote, art for inclusion of people with disabilities in Belarus. Another $3.9 million for LGBT causes in Macedonia. $8.3 million for equity and inclusion education in Nepal. I could go all night. And many of my colleagues are upset. They're really mad at Mr. Musk. Hell, I think we ought to give him a medal. All he's doing is what President Trump said he was going to do. President Trump said he's going to audit the spending. So Trump goes and hires Musk, again with the top top secret security clearance. Nobody can quibble with his intelligence. You know, the guy's as smart as Einstein's cousin. He's a very successful businessman. Some say he's the richest guy in the world. And he's doing the auditing. And man, he's finding a lot of stuff. I call it spending porn. Now, I'm not saying everything that USAID does is wasted. But I'm saying a lot of it is. A hell of a lot of it is. And we ought to be on the floor of this United States Senate thanking Mr. Musk.
Here's just a small sample of what Musk uncovered. $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $20 million to create a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat misinformation in Kazakhstan, $10 million to provide meals to an al-Qaeda-linked group, and $7.9 million for Sri Lankan journalists to avoid binary gendered language. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. And the worst part? The people in Washington don't want you to know about it.
And we ought to be asking him to go through every agency and look at everybody's budget. Everybody's budget. That's what the American people want. They don't want to talk about process. They don't want to continue with the Washington way. They want to save some money. Now, let me tell you what's really going on here, too, Mr. President. For 4 years under President Biden, and for 8 years under President Obama, and I respect both of them. I don't hate anybody. I don't. When I say my prayers at night, one of the things I ask God, God, don't let me hate, because it's hard in Washington. Don't let me hate. I have all the respect in the world for President Biden and President Obama. Tough job. But between them, they spent 12 years in Washington, and presidents set the tone. They control the questions that are asked. And here's the question that President Obama and President Biden asked for 8 years. For 12 years. I heard it every single day. Who needs to pay more in taxes? Is it you? Is it you? Who needs to pay more in taxes? We need more money. Who needs to pony up more? That was the issue. But that's not the issue today. We have a new president. You know what the issue is today? What the hell happened to all the money? What the hell happened to all the money? And that's what Mr. Musk is finding out. That's all this is about. And I'm just shocked that my colleagues have decided that this is a hill they're going to die on. How can you look the American people in the eye and support this kind of waste? Support this kind of spending porn? I mean, the election to me made at least one thing clear, that the American people are sick and tired of people in Washington denying reality. The last administration tried to convince us that we were living in a crime-free world where inflation was temporary and the border was secure. And the American people didn't buy it. You know why? Because it wasn't true. And the administration, our last administration, tried to argue that Bidenomics was making our lives better. But the American people knew differently.
While Washington freaks out, the American people get it. You work hard, pay taxes, try to provide for your family, and meanwhile, they're throwing money around like it's monopoly cash. People are struggling with inflation, high gas prices, and rising costs of living. And yet, our leaders are more worried about protecting their spending habits than fixing the mess. Let me ask you, do you think Washington should be spending your tax dollars like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I want to hear from you. For years, politicians in Washington kept asking, who needs to pay more in taxes? But now, the real question is, where did all the money go? That's what Musk is trying to uncover. We need to keep demanding transparency and accountability. Subscribe, like, and share this video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.